love. It's just me, Emily. Welcome to my show where we discover how to find your soul's purpose, embody your essence, and live a life in alignment with your truth. Today, I am joined by two exceptional guests, Ross and Kelsey Sheehan. They are the founders of Sweat Den, which is a local gym that I go to, but it's so much more than a gym. It's like a community, it's a workout, it's a mindset. It just feels like a movement. And the reason I invited them on the show is because I feel like they are the living embodiment of what it means to live your purpose. So welcome to the show, you guys. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thanks having
introduction.
us.
Yes, absolutely.
A lot of pressure.
Yeah, I'm like, I wasn't nervous, and now I'm nervous.
So I begin every episode with this question, and that is, what masks do you think you wear? And when you take them off, what do you see?
Ross, you get to go first.
Well, I guess when I think about that question, I immediately go to the ego. And I think I know that any answer I would give would be the ego for me, mirroring or trying to like prove something again. And my answer would be, you asked kind of like what the perception, what people perceive you to be, like what masks you're wearing. I can honestly say that I'm in a place of learning about myself to where I know that I don't know what perceptions, like how I'm perceived.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that I'm comfortable with who I am and that I'm not worried about how I'm perceived today, which is great. But if I was to say that people perceive me as being quiet, but I'm outgoing, I obviously want you to know that I'm outgoing. Like, I feel like it would be me projecting something else and the ego continuing to kind of operate in a place. So I would have to sit with that one and say that, like, I think that that's the process of consciousness for me. Of that I will never have the answer to. And sometimes I feel like I'll have more of the answer, and sometimes I feel like I'll have less, depending on where I'm at in my process. But that I will never know. And that's the human aspect, is that I'm always going to be playing that game of head in the heart all day, every day, which for me is the game of like, how much can you move into the heart? Can you get away from operating, from the ego? And can you do that for more than 5 seconds? Can you do that for a day? Can you do that for a week? Can you acknowledge when you're in those places? But I know that I most definitely, that the mask is there and it's there for everybody, but I just don't, I don't know myself well enough. Or I guess I feel like I know myself well enough to not project. Yeah. And to say that I don't know.
That's fair. I will say, in the sense that we have a fitness studio and 90% of our members are women, I would say if I were going to answer that for Ross, that so many...
Well, you're supposed to answer
Well,
for
no,
yourself.
but I like to deflect.
I want to know what's for you.
To deflect, to talk about other people.
Yeah, no, I spoke long enough.
No, but I think that this is important. It also pertains to you without talking about me. But anyways, what I was trying to say is when people take Ross's class for the first time, they have this assumption about him. And I think it's because he is a male instructor in a predominantly female, like, clientele, essentially. And the response is always like, oh my gosh, I just took Ross's class for the first time, and that's so not what I thought his class was going to be like. And so I think, like, judging a book by its cover, externally what he looks like, and he's a very masculine guy and also very confident. But when you take his class, it's led with heart and just a lot of grace and a lot of patience. And so I think the mask that he wears can be a little intimidating because he's so confident in that space, So I don't know.
And that's like where it's someone else's perception. And it's like they're mirroring in there, right?
Totally. Yeah, I think it's their image of what it means, what they think a masculine man in fitness should be, should act, should show up as. And then, when they come into class, it's like, you're going to get a whole spiritual download from Ross.
And learn the anatomy of the body.
And it's all just perception, but I guess that I think that is something as a leader. Can you get caught in that? If you're caught in other people's perception, and if you really are a creator versus like a consumer, I think that's a catch, or like something in your process to continue to think about. Am I caught up? Is my process and what I'm creating or what I'm putting out there for people, is it authentic, or am I worried about perception and am I held up on people's perception?
Yeah.
Which is a very challenging process.
For
sure. It'd be interesting, like, for both of you, when you're first starting out, and I'm not letting you off.
I know, I'm like, look at what I do there.
But like, was there a time in your career where you felt like you needed to wear more of a mask because you felt like you needed to show up a certain way? And now, after you've both done a lot of work,
right?
Where you see, like, I'm more aware of my masks, and I allow those to dissolve, and I'm trying to live more heart-led. But
okay, so a mask that I think I wear is kind of twofold. One in which I make it look like I've got it all figured out and that I know what I'm doing. And I think that there's an element where that mask is important for the role that I have, because what Ross and I do is we take on a lot of responsibility, and we have this sense to protect everybody that comes into our space. And if we are really transparent and real all the time, it becomes about us. Do you know what I mean? Versus the member. And I think that they're in the fitness industry. I think that that's where this has gotten lost a bit, is it does become about the trainer. And the trainer has now become a celebrity and an influencer. And for Ross and I, it's never been about him or I. It's been about the people. And, we had this concept of like, it just starts with one person. And so I have to let our clients know that I do know what I'm doing and I do have it all figured out, because otherwise, why would they, spend the time and the money and the energy to train with us? But in that same fold, I don't. I don't have it all figured out. And I don't know what I'm doing, but to the sense that like I'm figuring it out as I go. And I think that can come down to being a first-time mom, and that can come down to being a business owner. I've had this business for 15 years, but we just launched a brand new leg of it. And that is, we're kind of starting over essentially. So I think that's a mask that I wear, one that I think is important to have, but also knowing when I can take it off and be my true authentic self and be a bit more vulnerable and share a little bit more, but then also know that I'm a professional and that there's kind of like a time and a place to put it back on,
Yeah.
It's empathy.
Yeah.
And I think that in what you spoke to is having, like, being cognizant of empathy, if you have it, in that if you're completely raw and real, but you're also in a place of trying to support people's growth, sometimes you're not going to be living your purpose.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it is understanding the energy, especially when you're in a room of 20, 30, 40 people, understanding the energy as a whole and trying to support that, even if it doesn't completely, totally align with where you're at or what you want your purpose or your stance to be in an hour-long period, that you kind of put your ego aside and give people what they need to be able to kind of live their best selves for that moment in time,
I think it's knowing when to connect and knowing when you need to inspire. And when you need to connect, you need to be real and you need to be authentic and you need to like peel back the layers and be like, I'm just like you. I have the same struggles as you, but I'm here. Kind of like what we talked about this morning in class, But then also being like, okay, there's a reason why Ross and I are in our role as the owners of the business, and we work with thousands of people all over the world, and knowing that like this is our gift, this is like our calling, this is what we are destined to do. And that is when we need to step up and show up and lead and inspire.
Yeah. It seems like it's a tension right?
Yeah.
Just knowing when to step into each identity, each role. And I've been in those classes where I can see that shift where people are dragging and it's like after the holidays and you're like, guys, I'm with you. Like it was hard for me to get up today.
Yeah.
And when you're really like pushing excellence. And this is also how I've gotten to where I am, right? So it is always coming from a place of authenticity. It's just a matter of reading the energy.
Absolutely. Hi, hon. Do you feel like I'm needing something right now?
We have special guest Miley on the show today. So I'd love to hear just how Sweat Den began, a little bit of the story. What I'm really interested in is like, how did you get the download that this is like what you are meant to do and the process of building this over time?
I feel like we need to take it in two different versions because...
Like your version and my version? Yeah. Well, you go first. You started it.
Well, okay, that's fair. And the reason why I want him to tell his side of the story, because it's so unique. And honestly, when he came on board is when everything really like shifted and changed for us. But Sweat Den was really born by this vision I had to create a bigger impact. You know, I have been in the fitness industry since, like working in the fitness industry since I was 22 years old. And I started out in group fitness. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I'm somebody who, I always make the joke that like I was born into fitness because my mom took a step aerobics class while she was pregnant with me and then literally went into labor with me. So I'm like, I just feel like this was my calling from the very beginning. So it was always just a way of life for me. I was a dancer growing up. Dance was like my love language. I did it professionally, danced for the Broncos for 4 years. And at that time in my life, fitness, it didn't have the same meaning that it does now. It was strictly I was doing it for what I looked like, you know, and it was almost like, I mean, this would be a whole different episode essentially, but I did it because I was trying to fit like a certain image. You know what I mean? I mean, I was a professional cheerleader and that's like, yes, I had an amazing talent as a dancer, but also like you just have to fit a certain look, you know? And I was 18 years old. I was so young, you know, and that's such you're molding into this person that you're trying to become and just your thought processes, you're super naive at that age. And so I just felt like I had to really run my body into the ground so that I looked a certain way. And so even though I enjoyed fitness, I didn't take it from the lens of gratitude, which is where I'm at now as an adult. And it took many years of kind of like unlearning and relearning and seeing what didn't look good or feel good to learn what does feel good now. So when I got into fitness, you know, I was in group fitness and I fell in love with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you could have a career in fitness. Mind you, I was making pennies at the time, but I didn't care because I was so passionate about it. And Ross was with me at the time and he was so supportive. And he was like, that's awesome. At some point, we're going to need to focus on the financial aspect of this, but I support you. And so I was in that for a long time. You know, I was in the industry for a long time. And then I just kind of started to become uninspired. I felt like I had hit a ceiling. I just kind of burnt out. And so then I, started to explore different paths. And at the end of the day, I was like, wow, there's really not a one size fits all. And I feel like I'm in this thing of preaching to everybody the same message, but really we're all so unique and we're so different. I want to start pursuing like personal training. And Ross came from the background of personal training in Scottsdale. And he was like, what if we turned our garage into a studio? Because I was scared, I was like, I've never owned my own business before. Like, what if I don't like it? I'm effed, And he's like, well, let's take baby steps. So he literally built out our garage into a personal training studio. I had no idea what I was doing. I started with like a couple pieces of equipment. And I met one girl for coffee and I landed my first client. And I was like, okay, if I can start with one client, I'll go from there. And that from day one has always been my mentality to just start with one person. And I had a Facebook page. Like I started a social media and it was just like, it was so early, I was so early with the personal training thing, like from your own home. This was before COVID. Nobody was doing that. Everybody was in big time gyms and that was the sexy thing to do. And I'm like, hey, come train with me in my garage. Yeah. Is that cool or creepy? We don't really know yet. But it really just caught fire fast and it grew very authentically and by word of mouth. And I just started to attract some really amazing clients. And then we just really outgrew the den. And then COVID hit and I kind of shut all the personal training down. And within the first 24 hours, I jumped on the Zoom train. And I was like, I have no idea what Zoom is. I'm going to figure this out as I go. And I think my first Zoom class had like 20 people in it. And I was like, this is awesome, crushing it. And then all of a sudden, Ross and I did, because he'll get into this, but he had another business at the time. And then he was like, well, I want to get in on this as well. So we did like a sweat in his and her workout on a Saturday. And we completely met capacity. We didn't even know you could have a limit on Zoom. And we hit 100 members. And I was getting all these text messages from people that were like, hey, we're trying to jump into the workout, but it says you guys are at capacity. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. So I'm like asking people on the Zoom. So the rest is kind of history. He has the brains as far as like the business background goes and launched our membership. And then we started training with people all over the world. And as with anything, I think we'll talk about the comfort crisis, but we got really comfortable with our on-demand platform where we're so comfortable that we're almost not growing anymore. And so then we're like, okay, what does this look like to move into a brick and mortar? In the meantime, we get pregnant with Bo. We have Bo. We're launching this business. I'm like, okay, we've been together we've been married for 10 years. Why did we wait until this point to have a baby and launch this business at the same time? But timing worked out absolutely perfectly. And then in October, we celebrated our 1 year of Sweat Den, the brick and mortar. And it's been the most transformative, most challenging, most humbling year of my life, which is that growth in a nutshell, So, boy, I feel like I just took up the whole podcast.
No, I love it. I love it.
Okay, but Ross has a really cool story that he's really never shared before. So I think this is a great time to do so.
Well, I might not share the whole thing because I think in one of the things that Em's asking is we were able to really lean into and develop this culture and principles, and we found it through the pandemic. So I was in a different industry and I had been working through, which I think is something to note, leaving that industry. I owned a business and had employees, and I knew that I had been in it for 10 years and I was like, I'm not passionate. I feel like I'm picking people's pockets. Everything was obviously above board, and it's real estate development, but not picking people's pockets, patting my own pockets, excuse me.
Like, what were you doing behind my back?
Yeah. Just patting my own pockets. It was all about finances and making money. And I wasn't passionate about it at the end of the day. And I found that out after making it to a place of being extremely comfortable. And I knew that strength training was always a passion of mine, was always the anchor in my life. And so when the pandemic started, I closed my business and joined forces with Kelsey. And we saw people leaning into some of these principles that we had as a couple and had in the original Sweat Den. And we really sat down and started to think about those principles and those characteristics and what we could do to support people through the pandemic. And it really led into us leaning into and saying there's a gap in that, every business talks about their culture. And everybody says that they lead with passion or that they lead with purpose. But then there's a 1% that actually go out and do it. Yeah. And being those people is something that we really wanted to be and lead by example. And I think that developing that culture, and we drew people in that wanted growth and that wanted a different life. And the people that we made uncomfortable and that it was too much, obviously didn't end up moving forward with us. And so we've been able to develop this community of just very strong, very resilient people. And I think it's all because of our culture and the principles that we lead with. And, we believe that we're authentic in that. And I think that that is what kind of has developed Sweat Den into what it is this principled, place and community that wants to strive to get better together.
Absolutely. And I feel that every single workout. And I want to talk about that. What I also want to tease out, though, is just in terms of how you guys followed your passion, because I think it's really scary to follow your passion. It's scary to walk away from a job that's highly lucrative, but you're not feeling the passion. So can you just talk a little bit about what that was like for you?
It was a long process. And I think when I hear about people that have started their own their own business or have started a new project, they don't speak enough to the failures. And I did it multiple times and failed multiple times before I anchored into Sweat Den. So I was lucky to have a partner that knew what she was doing and had developed a business prior to me jumping in. But one of the things that I think helped me a ton is I really got into a space of taking my time and making sure that financially I could support the decision. I had been in real estate as a kid and moved around in the real estate sector from development to construction management to owning. I was a custom home builder, and any move that I made where I wasn't financially secure, I had too much pressure, too much leverage to be able to lead with my heart and to be able to have that decision have space and to be able to kind of organically grow, especially in any position of like sales where you're like, anything we do, we're selling something, right? And so if you have too much leverage against you I talk about like leverage that I put on myself a lot, right? It's not just like financial in the least bit, but there's leverage in every decision you make. If you can minimize your leverage in making that decision, and even if you have to have like that side hustle go for longer than you think, I think that's a beautiful thing. And it takes discipline to maintain those 2 or 3 things until you know that it's right. And I think for me, it was maturing and having patience in that process. And then at the end of the day, I took 1,000% pay cut. Like, in
the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah. Wow. I was confident enough about where I was headed. Like I had a vision and I had very specific goals, but I said to myself, you may not ever get back to making what you were making. And are you happy with that? The answer is yes. I had gotten to a place of like connecting with a certain amount of clients that I knew my passion was in making a small difference versus making a lot of money, and so be it.
Yeah.
I might not get back to a certain amount of money, and I was just, I was at a place where I wanted to completely change my life anyhow. And I love change. I love being in the ocean, and I love having to kind of swim towards the goal. And so it was exciting for me. But I said at the time, I think I was 30, I had worked from 21 or 22 to 34 to establish myself in a career. And when I made the move, I said, you probably don't have a lot of space to do this again. So this is going to have to work, right? Like I knew we were going to have a family. Yeah. Like this is, you're going to have to make this work regardless of how hard you have to work.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that I think is the difference maker in what I've seen is it's the hard work.
Right.
Like it doesn't just come to you. You're going to have to work for it.
Have you ever found yourself wondering, is there more to life than this? Like you followed all the steps. You found your dream job, your dream girl, maybe you even started a family, but you're still questioning, could life be more meaningful, more beautiful? Could I feel more alive? If so, then it might be time to connect with a deeper part of yourself, your soul. And luckily for you, I'm opening just a handful of one-on-one coaching spots to help you discover your soul's purpose and live a life in alignment with your truth. Because here's the issue. Many of us are living 2 lives. Our identity is split into 2 selves, the conditioned self and the true, authentic self. The conditioned self is the part of us that follows societal rules. It's easily influenced by parents, by friends, by partners, by the media, by culture, by religion, really anything outside of ourselves, and is often driven by the ego. The authentic self is the part of us that follows our soul. It's influenced by synchronicities and signs from the universe and is driven by love and serving the collective whole. My work is about helping you discover your authentic self by reconnecting you back to your soul. When you live a soul-led life and in alignment with your truth, you feel confident in your decisions because you're sure of who you are and what you're meant to do here in this lifetime. You feel in flow and at ease because you're using your God-given gifts and strengths in a way that feels good and serves the collective. It's coming from a place of love. You feel energized about life, curious about your potential, and excited about the endless possibilities that lie ahead. Life becomes deeply meaningful and profoundly magical. I know because I walked myself through this transformation just about a year ago, and now I would be so honored and grateful to help you do the same. If you're interested in exploring one-on-one soul purpose coaching with me, just book a discovery call in the link in the show notes. This is a no pressure call to simply explore if this type of work is aligned for you. Spots are filling up quickly, so don't hesitate. If you're curious, trust the calling. It's your soul. So speaking, I'm like, where do I want to take this?
I know. I'm like, I want to chirp in here too, but I just want to.
So, okay, obviously where I want to go with this is you have this vision, both of you, and you just like walked away from a ton of money and you're like, we're doing this. Clearly you're going to hit some challenges and obstacles along the way. How do you decide I'm still going to do this? I'm dedicated to this vision versus when is it time to pivot?
Oh, that's it. I mean, because we've faced that path so many times.
Yeah. I mean, we've faced that path multiple times in Sweat Den.
Yeah.
In the like growth and the rendition is how, as like a type A, as an achiever, when do you decide to pivot and let something go?
Yeah.
Right.
Like say you hadn't made the money, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, I have a family.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like thinking on that because I'm like, which story do I want to go with here?
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. I really don't.
I think where I would kind of lead this conversation is both Ross and I, like from the depths of our soul, believe in what we're doing, and I have never taken on a job for money. It's just like, that's never been a driver for me. He's very different. I am not somebody who, and
I jump for money.
He does. He'll do wild and crazy things for money. No, I'm kidding. No, but my point is he's very, which is why Sweat Den is where it's at now. Right? I'm passionate. I do everything with heart. But no, I've evolved. Now I'm very business oriented and I'm like trying to turn this into something bigger than just a mom and pop shop out of our garage, But at the end of the day, we truly believe in what we're doing. We see that we're making an impact, and we do have the mindset of like, if we are making an impact in just one person's life, then we are doing our job. And we realize that it's also an ebb and a flow. But then we're also like, the fitness industry is so competitive. And so we are constantly needing to be like, do we need to pivot? Do we need to be investing money in the in-person? Do we need to be investing time and energy into our on-demand platform? Like there's a lot of strategy that's going on behind the scenes with Ross and I that I don't think anybody sees on the surface. And sometimes we have to make hard calls because we're like, okay, we've got to be financially successful this month. So him and I'm going to be teaching 12 classes. You're teaching 12 classes. We're going to be kind of falling short other places. And then on the flip side, same sacrifice comes into the on-demand platform. So a lot of strategy comes into play. But I think at the end of the day, if we lose sight and we feel like we're no longer adding value, making a difference, not just becoming part of the noise and being mediocre, then we've got to pivot,
Yeah.
Do you see it from that light?
Yeah, I do.
Well, you're not saying anything.
No, I do. I think it's a lot of inner work too, and that it comes back to the ego. And people see every facet of your business in today's world. And so I think there's a lot of like shame that is attached to this didn't work. And I think reshaping and having perspective of like, this failed for a reason because I can go do this. And it takes time to see that. And I think bridging those gaps is brutal. The time and the space of like, we're in a world where we all want to be busy. And so having to sit with that process, and everyone wants everything now.
Just going to say that.
So I think that it is always an opportunity to sit with yourself, and that doesn't pay the bills. And that's a problem, you know?
That's hard.
Yeah. So I think that 50% of the businesses that, you know, or the channels or renditions of Sweat Den will not work. Like, I have visions of other things, and they're not all going to work out. And the higher you get, the harder it's going to be, you know?
Right.
Like, level 20 is going to be harder than level 5.
Yeah.
So,
but we're out here trying.
Yeah. But I think it has a lot to do with your perception of what the process was. And if you see it as a massive failure that sticks you in this place, or if you can do the work to move forward.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me because both of you guys said that really when you face a challenge, it's about coming back home within, whether it's connecting to your why and making sure that you're still creating the impact that you desire, and then looking at failure through the lens of, is this an attachment that my ego has created?
Yeah.
And instead switching to, okay, I failed for a reason, and what is here for me? What can I learn from this?
Absolutely.
Right.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think you can't burn yourself out for others. Like, if your community is telling you we need more of this, and you're like, well, it's bleeding me dry, and financially it's doing nothing for me, you can't keep going for others. It's like, at some point you have to make a difficult decision to say, I'm human too, and I need to make a shift at some point.
Absolutely.
That's
and
powerful,
I think when you're bringing your purpose to life, and I think purpose is all encompassing, so I'm talking about this with career, is that it's I believe it is for me first, for you first. It's like, does it light me up? Does it give, am I pumped about what I'm doing every day? And then naturally, because you're doing something that lights you up, other people benefit from that. And that's the impact. So it has to start for you.
100%.
I think so. I truly believe that. Rick Rubin speaks to, you create for yourself. And he's a music producer, and someone that was interviewing him said, so you don't think about the listener when you create the music? And he said, absolutely not. If I did, the process would be lost. I don't care. Yeah. He's like, I don't care if they like it or not. If I love it and I know that it was a creative process, then I put it out and I'm done. I move forward.
And by the way, it'll be successful.
Yeah, I love that. And I think this will be a good segue into, I heard you kind of say when you were building out like the vision and thinking about the community that you wanted to create, you said, we want people who are hungry for growth and who are like ready to kind of get uncomfortable. We're going to invite those people in, and the people who don't want that. All right, cool.
Yeah.
So can you speak a little bit to like, who is the Sweat Den client, and like, what are the core values that you guys really have in place?
Yeah. Go for it.
I mean, our core values, especially if you're like newer to the Sweat Den, are passion, purpose, grit, and gratitude. And we've since tacked on excellence. And those core values truly just started with Ross and I, and what is important to us, how we lead our lives, and how that we feel like shapes the people that we want surrounded by us. We really want to be surrounded by like-minded people, high-achieving people who have high standards for themselves, although they may not be where they once were, although they may not be where they want to be yet. They're willing to show up in a very courageous way to take that first step, but to be willing to do the work. Fitness, I feel like we're very sensitive to not taking advantage of low-hanging fruit. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And like feeding on people's weaknesses just to get bodies in the door. We are all about saying, okay, these are our standards. These are our expectations. When you come to our class, you're going to realize we're intense, and we're not going to change for you. If that makes you uncomfortable, then you probably just won't come back. I know I'm not for everybody. I am a lot, I've got a lot of energy, and it's not something I fake. It's just who I am. I truly wake up that way. Just ask Ross.
Yeah.
But so I feel like we are just seeking out good people first and foremost, kind people that want to make an impact and a difference, and realize that it kind of starts with doing the work on themselves.
Yeah. It's kind of old school values. I think our principles, old school values, in that we really ask people to strive to become the greatest versions of themselves. And when I saw the opportunity for this space, I saw the opportunity for breath work and the spiritual development. Strength training has been an opportunity for me to find balance in, emotional, physical, spiritual, so much more than strength training. And for me, it's just an opportunity to get in front of people and then hopefully show them how strength training can catapult you into resilience and discipline in all other aspects of your life.
Yeah.
And, through like in the spiritual realm and through breath work, you need that strength training to balance and to kind of hold that balance so that you don't float off into space. Like I find if I go through, deep breathwork practices, and if I get so kind of like esoteric that I need to just go lift weights to balance me back into my body and to like center myself. But I think that the
it's gonna float away.
Yeah. But the resilience and the discipline and those core values of like wanting to be a leader in your family and in your community, I think that the ripple effect of truly like leaving a group of people where you can feel like everyone wants to be better and I think the most positive impact you can have is to live and lead by example. And it's so simple to do. It's just so challenging. But
I was going to say, it's not simple to do.
Yeah. It's simple to say.
Simple to say. Yeah.
It's very simplistic, right? But then like, who are you when no one's around?
Yeah.
Waking up early, strength training or breath work or focusing on nutrition or any of those things that ground you. And then who you choose to be around. That's really it for me is I'm like, if you choose to be around us and our community, you are saying that you want to become the best version of yourself. And it's a challenge that we put out to everybody that comes into the class. Like I like challenging people to that of like, you thought you were coming to lift weights. You aren't. You are coming to be the best version of yourself. If you don't want that, that's okay. Hopefully you do. Or maybe you don't want it today and you come back in a week. And then that just ripples out, hopefully. And you've been able to truly make a positive impact on the world.
Yeah. But you'll notice, we preach process all the time. And it's process over perfection. And no 2 days are the same. And, having these absurd expectations of like, well, I should have this all figured out right now or this month, right? And
yesterday, actually.
Okay, I'm going to use an analogy of like, because I'm taking Nutrafol for my hair or something, you know what I mean? And it says, okay, you're not going to see results for 12 weeks. And you're like, check, I'm not going to see results for 12. And we just buy in, Yeah. But when it comes to strength training or fitness or working on yourself, if we're like, hey, it's going to take 12 weeks for you to see any sort of results, they've got this whole thing where it's like, in 4 weeks, you'll hear it. In 8 weeks, you'll see whatever, I don't even know how it goes. But people just don't realize that it is a process that you have to begin every single day. And if it doesn't go the way you thought it was going to go one day does not mean you're a failure. It does not mean it's not going to work for you. It just means that it didn't work for you today. So you have to have the mental fortitude. You have to have the resiliency and the self-respect to get up and try again tomorrow. And that's where we will always be there to welcome you with open arms and be like, I'm proud of you for getting here today because I know it wasn't easy. So when we talk about, we have such high expectations for our community, it is not about being perfect. It is quite the opposite, and just supporting people where they're at on their journey and hoping that people have this stamina to just keep going.
And there's a big difference in wanting to be a leader or a follower in this world. And we are just trying to unpack potential. Like, do you want to be a leader?
I love that so much. And I feel your core values when I come into your class. And it's not like when you were talking, I was thinking show, don't tell. You're not, yes, you are telling them, but you can, as a client, I can tell that you guys are living them every day because it's so fluid and it just comes through with your energy. And I guess where I want to go with this is you've kind of thought of your core values to create this community. You talk about it every day in class. You're living it at home and how this gym, this movement is also just such a metaphor for life. Right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying all of that first and foremost.
I don't think either of us would have done the move to going to the public if we didn't want it to be something more than strength training. Because it doesn't matter that much if you're not going to do something there's enough gyms, within a 1 mile radius to where we're at, where you can go and just do your thing. And that's kind of like, if you're going to have like values, you need to be at the 1% for them to matter.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, I was just on break, Christmas break in Hawaii, and I went to a couple different gyms there, and they were fine, but it felt like a workout, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it. I was like, why is it that with Ross and Kelsey, like I push myself so much harder.
Oh my gosh,
because
you do.
I know that like there's just something more there. And so I'm wondering, because you guys can you speak a little bit to how intentionality really shapes the workout experience or what you're trying to create for your clients? That's what done.
I mean, it's everything.
Yeah.
Back to what Ross said, our whole thought process by doing this is like, we cannot be doing more of the same by rolling this out. So what is going to make us unique? And it truly is just how we live our life. And, we're veterans in this. This is not something new that we're trying out. I mean, Ross started training when he was 13 or 14 years old, like personal training in a gym, and same with me. And so I think what has kept us in the game for so long is that it all resorts back to intention and through training through the lens of gratitude and realizing what a blessing, and this, and what a gift it is to be able to be on your mat and move your body freely without having to try. And let's not associate it with like the workouts aren't hard. They're hard as shit. You know what I mean? But I just mean, if you have an able body and you're strong and capable enough to get there, then that is such a privilege. And so I think not a lot of people up until this point have really been speaking to that. And I think once we started sharing that message, people were like, wow, you're so right. We are so lucky to be here. And so it started to change from, okay, we're going to talk about snatching your waistline and, doing all this superficial stuff, to being like, let's talk about how strong you can get, how strong you can feel, how lucky you are to move your body. And so I think that without that intention, it becomes another workout. With that intention, it's life-changing.
Yeah. I think it starts at sacrifice. I always feel like I can't be there for people that are asking me to be there for them if I'm not sacrificing other things. And I think it goes back to accomplishing and growth in business, is you're going to have to sacrifice something and be different than others if you want that outcome that you're looking at, the 1% they have. I want to be at the 1%. You're going to have to sacrifice something. And so it's always, for us, like, I'm not going to have the glass of wine, or I'm not going to watch the TV show. I'm not going to. I am going to do the breath work. I am going to stretch.
I'm going to do the cold plunge.
Yeah. And we do that 7 days a week so that like our energy is clear, so that we are aligned. And I think it's so that we can listen. Like, much of what we do week to week with our community is really listen to where people are at, how they feel, where their energy is at, based on what we are bringing them, and we will pivot if we need to. This is too much. The message is too much. We need to simplify. We need to simplify our message. We need to simplify our energy. We need to simplify the volume of the work.
They're too hard. They're too easy.
And we go all the way to, we utilize like the cycle of the year from Rudolf Steiner, and look at, based the summer, where is the energy? In the winter, where is this energy leading? And what is the intention of the universe? What is the breath of the earth? And we pair that all the way down into our program. So there's a lot of intention, I think, to be able to listen to what people need. And that's why our programs always change. Like this current program changed because of where everybody was at coming out of the new year.
Yeah.
We wanted to be here, and we decided to start here to support our people.
Love that. Yeah. And it's like, sometimes we get into this mindset of it needs to be fixed. It needs to be this way. And really, it's a constant coming back to meeting yourself where you're at, meeting your clients where you're at, and just like tuning in and then creating from there.
Absolutely.
As opposed to like, this has got to, like, I find myself doing that sometimes.
Totally.
So I love that. I wanted to talk about the comfort crisis with you guys, because I really resonate with this. I feel like it's not just in fitness. I think it's in life. I think, like you said, you were comfortable making a bunch of money, but you were like dead inside essentially.
Right.
So
hey.
or maybe
I was miserable. Yes.
He was very unhappy. He was not, he did not wake up with a pep in his step. He wasn't even doing the things that like brought him joy. And
we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
But.
How far back we going here?
Yeah. So where do you see this showing up in the gym? And then maybe from there we can talk a little bit how this is, that because the gym is a metaphor for life.
I know.
How is it showing up elsewhere?
Yeah. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I do think for me it leads back to philosophy. And I always am reading about the process of like the nature of a human being is to grow. I think growth equals happiness, slow, small, consistent growth.
Yeah.
But we're not meant to overindulge in food, in drinking, in sleep. We're meant to push ourselves and to grow. That's what makes us special and makes us unique as human beings. And I really think that verbalizing that and speaking to like the challenge and the pain that you are feeling, like the physical, is good. It's growth. And coming out of that feeling alive, if you can just like give people the opportunity, breath work as well, you have to kind of pass through the eye of the needle and you have to move into a lot of discomfort. And that might be it. You might not ever flow into a place of like bliss. The growth occurs there. And I think it goes past cold plunging and sauna. It's sitting with yourself and it's moving through processes.
I think sitting with yourself is a big one.
Yeah.
We don't know how to sit with ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't know how to be bored anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and the goals that, like being real with yourself as well, I think is painful. And like, if you're writing, do you really? I'm always questioning things that I write down. Do I really want that for myself? Or am I just saying that because it sounds good? And that's, I think, a challenging process. It's a humbling process, but it's, I think, just as uncomfortable as the physical. I think the physical is just like the opportunity to get into it. And then whether that be running, strength training, and then from there, you have the opportunity to move into some deeper work.
Right.
Yeah. And I speak to a lot, finding comfort through discomfort, and I think through strength training, we are applying a controlled amount of stress on your body. And you are teaching yourself how to hopefully respond versus react to that stress.
Yeah.
And so the more that you are, setting these principles for yourself, you're making these small promises to yourself where you're like, I cannot not do this. That's uncomfortable because you are holding the standard for yourself. You're holding this, I don't want to call it a rule, I'm calling it a principle, but you've made this principle for yourself where you're like, come hell or high water, I'm doing this. As uncomfortable as it is, I said I was going to do it and I'm going to do that. And so I think strength training, if you have committed to it, it is going to continue to add little stressors. You're physically challenging yourself mentally as well. But by doing that, you are preparing yourself to handle real stress and real situations that are going to happen because it's life. You can't not control that. But you're becoming more resilient. You're becoming really tough and you're preparing yourself for, that time where something might happen to you and you are like, okay, I know how to handle this because I've been training for it. Like something as simple as like I was Swiffering and vacuuming the other day and at the studio, we have this vacuum that does that at the same time. Yeah. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I should have this vacuum at home. And I'm like, my gosh, I've become so comfortable with all of these like pleasures that we have in life versus kind of sometimes doing things the hard way to make us stay strong and resilient and tough. I feel like all of the things that have, it's 2025. So there is a lot of things out there that just make things easy and comfortable. They have made us weak and kind of sick,
Yeah.
So I just think by buying into a tough program like Sweat Den, something that requires you to show up potentially 6 days a week, and push yourself outside that comfort zone, man, there's nothing but amazing outcomes that can come from that.
Yeah, I think we're addicted to the dopamine and to the pleasure, the safety, the comfort, and we need to reframe our relationship with pain and recognizing that growth is uncomfortable. They call them growing pains for a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the gym is Sweat Den is a great way to train yourself to sit with some of that discomfort, like you said, in a very like safe way. You're not going to die.
It's controlled.
You're going to be, it's okay. You can put down the weights if you really have
you
to.
You might feel like it.
But then like, you know, the physical is just one layer, and then you take it into the breath work. And can I be with myself? And can I fail and still feel the pain and disappointment of that?
Right.
And get back up and try it again.
Exactly.
Right.
Totally.
Instead of just avoiding it and never taking a risk.
Yeah.
I think it's that sample size of, I mean, it's clear that most people are not healthy and they're not happy, and life is very easy for most people now, in like, you know, this technology driven world.
Yeah.
Good habits create space for you, you know, and with that space, I think you're able to grow. Like, and bad habits take away time, they take away your space. And oftentimes it's just the way that it works that like good habits take discipline, they take acknowledgement, they take resilience. And I think that little by little, the things that like used to be hard are habits, and then they aren't hard, and you can continue. Like, there's so much momentum that is driven by just like strength training or just starting one thing. I think that all of those like kind of pillars that everyone speaks to, if you like can start with one of them, the strength training, you gain so much momentum to eat better or to sleep better, to hydrate, and they all kind of move along together. And what was hard once very quickly becomes, you know, routine.
Part of you.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. I remember starting my like spiritual practice and being hardly able to meditate for like 5 minutes. But then so I like told myself, okay, this is hard for a reason. It's because you're not used to it. Sit with the discomfort and just keep doing it. And now it's like I can't have a morning without it. Like I feel totally dysregulated, and
it's amazing.
But I think what you're saying, and also what Ross is saying, which is just really overlooked, is you also just got to give yourself time. It isn't going to happen overnight, and you're going to fail far more times than you're going to have success at first. But if you can just keep chipping away at it, if you can keep sticking with it, and I'm talking, you know, 365 days, you know, great things take time. Good things can happen overnight, but great things to sustain and to really make change, it happens over time. So, and just to give yourself some
grace. Yeah, exactly.
We are morphing into the same human.
Well, every week is going to have like 3 goods and 2 bad.
Yeah.
It's not like it's this linear process of like, but I feel like people give up on themselves so quickly because they have this hard goal, like even beginning of the year, you know, it's this hard goal. Yeah. And it gets smoked out in 3 days. And because you said it, it's like, well, now I have to quit. I can't do it. You know? Like, I like the idea of sitting with, I had a beer on the 2nd or 3rd, and I've been sitting with the idea of, I was like, maybe I go sober for, you know, 75 days or a year, but I don't care about the beer on the 2nd or the 3rd. It's an arbitrary date to me, you know, of like, maybe I'll do this, and it'll be a slow process of me acknowledging and deciding versus like putting this hard thing where I know it's going to set me up for failure.
Totally.
This is Ross. Anytime we have a glass or 2 of wine, the next day is like, I need your support. We're not drinking anymore. And it's, I mean, it's literally,
I am too. It's so crappy.
It's literally a glass or 2, not a bottle or 2. But this is what I love about him, is because he just cares, you know, and he cares about being better. And since having our son, you see a reflection of you in this being, and you're just like, you get one shot raising another human being, and my best is never going to be enough. And so it's an ongoing joke that we have, and whenever we do it, I'm like, oh God, here we go.
I love that. You said something really interesting there. My best is not enough. And I have a really hard one with that because I've struggled with self-worth. And so how do you strive for excellence and also trust that like who you are fundamentally is enough?
Okay, well, I want to clarify that. I was speaking to being a mom for my son, because I just, in my eyes, like, I have to be superior for him. And that, again, that doesn't mean perfection. Right. I never want those two to go hand in hand, because it's really messy. Yeah. And I have figured out how to become a mom by becoming a mom. There's absolutely no way that you can prepare for that shift. As many times as people can tell you, you will never know until you are in that position. But I think I really want to be gentle with that, because I have never been somebody who has struggled with self-worth. I have been somebody who, I think my upbringing, I have just been very supported my entire life of, you are amazing, you are doing enough, I'm so proud of you. I've heard that my whole life. And so I think for me in this role, I realize what a responsibility you have through your words and how critical it is to inspire somebody by recognizing that the path is not linear. It is undulating, essentially. It is up and down, highs and lows, but to always come back to, I'm trying, you know? And so I don't even know if that answers, your question. And I'd love to hear Ross's response, but it cannot be it cannot be striving for perfection, but you have to keep striving for just wanting to be better.
Yeah. No, I think that's what I would say too. I think you have to hold both of those worlds together. You have to strive. I always am into worlds of pushing people as hard as I possibly can and knowing that I'm pushing them too far, and then kind of supporting them with, and also have grace for yourself and knowing that it's not going to be perfect. In my process as a coach, I continue to try to have both of those worlds have a little bit more balance. But I want to be there to push people and to get them to the next place. And so I know sometimes that I'm going to go a little bit further than maybe I should. And as long as I am supportive of and can really acknowledge, like, I know I'm pushing you. You need to have grace, but I'm just trying to push you because I want you to be better. It's out of love. And that's how I try to speak, like, the inner monologue with myself too. I'm pushing myself. I know that I'm pushing myself. I push myself really hard every day. And then when I go to some kind of internal practices, I make sure that I, like, show myself self-love and say, I'm pushing myself because I want to be the best version of myself.
Last thing I want to say to that. That was beautiful. That was really well said. Change can come from two places, a place of lack or a place of love. And I think that once people can identify that I'm doing this because I love myself enough to do this, it will happen. If you are punishing yourself for something that you did or didn't do, if you feel like, you know, you have to break your body down because you don't like what you see in the mirror, that is where your worth just plummets.
It's very natural, right?
We're
to kind of punish yourself through strength training.
Exactly. Through exercise. I mean, I've lived through it, but I've seen in my, I've seen in myself, I've seen in thousands of clients that we've worked with, the ones that get to the other side, the ones that have success are the ones that do it from a place of love.
I love all of that. Like, that hit the from lack or love, for sure. And it's duality. It's holding that tension of, I'm pushing myself to unlock my potential, right? Trusting that, and I can give myself grace and love myself on the days where I'm not able to do that.
Yes.
It's just not a perfect process. And it's just not perfect.
And it's not about perfectionism. Well, I was like, wow, did I say that? That's a big
Please, can we underline that?
So just curious, we've talked a little bit about, like, philosophy, and spirituality has kind of entered this conversation, breath work. So do you have a spiritual practice? And if so, can you just share a little bit about what that is?
A spiritual practice that I've started incorporating actually is a little bit, the whole spiritual thing is a little bit newer for me. I mean, I've learned
spiritual thing.
I've learned a lot from Ross. And I really started to incorporate this after becoming a mom. I just needed a space to kind of make my way forward, you know what I mean? So just solitude, really trying to spend more time with myself. I've started to incorporate kind of like a 5-minute rule where I spend 5 minutes journaling, 5 minutes reading, 5 minutes meditating. And whenever he does breath work, I try to do his breath work sessions because they truly are life altering.
Breath work as a
I
whole.
still need to go to one.
Oh my gosh,
I haven't been to one.
I
know. I'm coming.
Wow.
The evenings are hard. Come on.
Yeah, no, it's true.
I'd be there if it was during the day. Just saying.
No, what you said?
You can't do.
Evenings are hard because I have to get kid coverage.
No, I know. Look at us. This is not rapid fire at all.
I
know. Breath work. I think breath work is a beautiful practice. I look at it as a spiritual practice. And I think that it's so, the barrier to entry is so low. People that make the opportunity to do it seem so far away. but they have apps, or you can just sit and be with yourself and focus on just a clean and clear breath practice, which is, there's so many benefits to that go past spirituality, just like physiological benefits, nervous system benefits. So breath work, I think, is something that balances me out and provides an anchor. I'll do it multiple times a day. And then philosophy. I love reading about human beings that are in the same place that we're at now a couple hundred years ago. It just kind of really centers me to oneness, in that we are all in the same boat. We are all working towards the same thing. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, I've read for 15 years. I read a couple pages every day for literally the past 15 years. And it's like, I've never heard or read those words every day. It's like a new thing for me. So that is something that I think it just provides clarity in that, like, this is a process. It's always going to be a process. And then just having the acknowledgement of, I want a deeper connection with God. Like, just like, acknowledging that has been a process and a big one for me.
Okay, so the spiritual thing was not that new to me. Okay. I'm like, wow, you totally just discredited yourself right there. Definitely Daily Stoic. We've been reading that for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I literally read it every single day, every single year. And it's like, I'll read the same thing and I'm like, it just never hits the same twice, because you're not in the same place that you were the first time that you read it.
Yeah. Would you guys say Stoicism is a lineage, or what would it be? A philosophy that you
I think so.
For me personally, yes.
Yeah. I think it's been a bridge to deeper, or I wouldn't say deeper, but it leads to so many different avenues. But most definitely, there's just so much to learn there.
Yeah.
And so many different philosophies and so many different I think questioning your thoughts and your beliefs is something that I try to do every day. I think it's a great practice for growth, just questioning everything that comes up and everything around you. And philosophy does that for me. I literally question everything when I'm reading that stuff. So
yeah, for me, it just really resonated with me, and it like got through to me. I think if you're trying to get into it, you have to be willing to explore and not just get set on like sticking with one philosophy. There's so much out there. So it's like, just explore until you find something that you're like, wow, that really spoke to me, and then pursue that. Yeah,
there is no one truth. It's all like, what is true for you?
Exactly.
100%.
So, yeah. And it's always funny. I always think like, I'll have an idea and I'm like, I write a social media post about it. I'm like, oh, that was so clever, Emily. And then I'll like read about it from a text like 500 years ago. And I'm like, this has been around forever.
Yeah.
Who are you kidding?
I have a framed quote from Ayn Rand from The Fountainhead that was always like my being. It was something that I framed on one of my birthdays as like, this is something that guides me in my life. Every day I question if I believe in it. I'm like, I don't know if I believe in this. And that's why I like it, is because I'm always like, it has to do with the ego. And one day I'll be like, I support that, I believe. The other, I'm like, I completely, totally don't believe in that.
Yeah, it's fair.
What do they say? The teacher who knows nothing. The one person who says they don't know knows all.
100%.
Yeah.
It's
always changing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, I could talk to you guys forever.
I know,
clearly. Need more time. I would love to wrap this if you guys could just give 1 or 2 tips, 3 tips, however many, to someone who I think might have a vision to do something different with their lives, but they're a little afraid to follow that calling. What would you tell them?
Do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I would say you can't be clear without a healthy lifestyle. So oftentimes in business or in whatever it may be, whatever your passion is, if we're talking about building a business, growing a business, having a new idea, if you are not physically active, if you're not supporting yourself with good nutrition, good sleep, the chances that you're going to make decisions that are clear and have energy behind them are low. So I think that, bringing into practice, getting good sleep and taking care of yourself will open up that valve to be able to be creative. And oftentimes see people come into the studio and they don't have the energy because they're stressed and they are, pushed outside of the studio from external forces. So they just don't have the energy to give to themselves. And so they can't be mad at not being able to do the thing.
Yeah.
It's like if you're trying to function off 4 hours of sleep, which then leads to not being able to make good decisions from a nutritional standpoint, you literally are not going to be able to come in here and be, a badass.
Yeah.
Start with taking care of yourself. And I think the energy and the creativity and the confidence will follow. But that's what like having a drink of alcohol does to me.
Yeah.
Is I'm like, I can't lead anyone. I'm depleted. I have no energy. Why would I be able to speak to any of this? I'm a complete normal human being that's not making disciplined decisions.
I'm right there with you.
know?
Yeah, so funny.
But if you are aligned, it will give you the confidence to be like, I'm living a different life and I think I can do this.
I love that. I think especially for women who have outsourced all of their energy to other people, taking care of other people. So bringing that energy back is what I hear. And then alignment.
Yeah.
That's what that does, is it gives you alignment.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple tips. I mean, your North Star, that's also your why. Like really knowing why you are doing what you are doing so that on the hard days when shit doesn't go your way, you're like, I know where I'm going and I know why I'm going there. So you have to have a why. You have to have a North Star. Start small.
Yeah.
Like literally start small, start quiet. You don't have to be shouting from the rooftops what you're doing and what you're trying to do. Do it for yourself first. Start with one person, start with one idea. And then slowly let that build and time. We were both in the industry for like a decade, literally, before we felt, okay, we are ready to take this to the masses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think we are instant gratification and we expect things to happen right away. You got to get experience. You got to get real life experience. You got to get experience failing. You got to get experience of people not liking you, not believing in what you're doing. You have to kind of create that so you can have a thick skin, because it's there's a reason why they say not everybody does it. It's you got to be a trailblazer and you got to be okay with failing, and you got to be okay with it taking a lot longer than you think it's going to take.
Yeah, and we're both 30, 39. Yeah, we're not wonder kids, right? We're like by the premonition of how you're supposed to excel and accomplish, we are like late bloomers, right?
It's not true. There's a lot of people who started in their 40s, okay? So we're ahead of the curve.
No, I just mean you hear like a podcast and the kid's like, yeah, I'm 23.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
But I will say, I mean, I started Sweat Den when I was 29.
Yeah.
I started Sweat Den when I was 29. We opened our brick and mortar when I was 38.
Yeah.
So there's a trajectory there.
Yeah.
You connected to your why. Take it slow, one step at a time. I think I needed to hear this.
Emily, slow down.
Release some of these crazy expectations. Well, this has been such an amazing interview. Thank you guys so much. Can you just, I'll link where people can find you, but if there's anything you want to share that's coming up or you want to have people know?
Follow us at Sweat Den, obviously. And we have a first class free for Sweat Den. So please come and try your first class. We have an on-demand platform that has a 7-day free trial. Please, if you don't live in Denver,
it's amazing.
You can train with us anywhere in the world. All you need really are dumbbells. And
Yeah, well said.
Great. Well, we will link all that in the show notes. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was wonderful. You're amazing at what you do, Em.
Thank you so much for listening in to It's Just Me, Emily. I hope that you enjoyed the show. If you did, it would be a great honor if you could subscribe and then leave a review. And if you do so, I will send you a beautiful hardback copy of my book, Love and Grief, to the first 20 people who subscribe and leave a review. When you do that, it just helps my podcast get boosted and more people will be able to come in and view the show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you in another episode.